Story 1. Object Permanence. Lately I have been questioning the reality of things around me. I can sure identify where it started and where it came from, but I just can't get it out. An idea cannot be killed. You may try to not think about it or distract yourself, but it is there, and it will always be there. Now, if you would like to hear a bit about me, just sit tight for a brief prelude. At a young age, I was like any other normal boy except for one little hindrance. I grew up, attended school, went to college, and graduated all with good, if not exceptional grades. I swam, participated in clubs, you name it. I used to be a very active and healthy guy. The hindrance grew with me. The doctors call it myopia. The kids at school call it glasses. I call it bad luck and genetics. Well, whatever you call it, I was stuck with it. And it stuck with me. It started with a slight blur in SS, then became a wall of impassibility. Surgery helped me slightly, but in the long run, just prolonged my fate. Eventually, I had the misfortune of coming down with eye cataracts. The surgery this time was damning retinal detachment, occurring when the retina literally detaches itself from the eye, can lead from severe myopia to blindness. In my case, it led to blindness at the age of 18. No, blindness meant several things to me, a dark point in my life, both literally and figuratively. I imagined that I was in a hole, a black place where no light shined. I existed there, he alone, in pure isolation. Sure, they could peer down into the hole and talk from their bright place above me, but they could not see. They could pretend, but they couldn't comprehend what as going through. I used to drink heavily and to experiment with substances in order to dampen my perception. When you have that much detachment from the outside world, you begin to think. Imagine you are in a room, there is a ball in the room, you look at it, and it is red, hard to the touch, and bounces with a satisfying thud. Now, if you leave it placed down on the floor and walk out of the room, facing the opposite direction, you cannot see, hear, or touch it anymore. What evidence do you have that it still exists? Infants go through this in their lives due to their pre-developed minds. I am sure we are all familiar with the game of peekaboo. Well, when the child sees its mother, it is aware it exists. But when the hands come down, where did mother go? She disappeared. And because the baby cannot perceive her, it firmly believes that she does not exist. Now apply this concept to us. Growing up, our brain develops, and we innately know that an object continues to exist. It is something we learn to accept. However, when you are alone in your room at night, the world outside does not matter. We are secluded in our own little world, and only the immediate area is tangible. Now imagine that the darkness envelopes your entire life. You cannot see what is around you. So what proof do you have that it truly exists? Sure, you can touch and hear and smell and taste, but how do you know you are not being manipulated? We have developed technology such as the television, which can create a world that exists in your field of vision. While watching it, our mind becomes absorbed in it, and we zone out from our surroundings. Our subconscious makes us believe that we exist in that world for a time, and when the movie ends, we snap back into real. We have created a means to manipulate vision. So why is that concept not applicable to our immediate world? Nowadays, every person that I pass may greet me with a hello or brush by me. Indeed, while I can feel them and hear them, how do I know they exist? How can I be absolutely sure that every single person and thing around me is living, has a conscience and a mind like I used to try making myself feel to cement the outside world, experiencing pain through sharp tools. However, this never worked out for me. It was just a mere interlude, after which I grasped the full nature of my surroundings. I believe this thought has taken over my mind, a sort of obsession, though I doubt I am wrong. I spend my time isolated here in my room. All is quiet. I know that the floor in front of me extends about 4 feet, and the one behind me 6 or so feet. I know the carpet is soft yet scratchy, smells damp. Possible mold here and there. The air seeping in is cold, and yet I know none of these things. There is no world outside of here. As I move throughout my house, I believe that my surroundings are a mirage. They only exist when I am around them to give them a physical exist. Hence, I feel as if I am in a grand sort of surreal play. The set is created around me as I go through the scenes. The characters appear and disappear, play different roles, but only ones that relate immediately to mine. I feel as if the universe is trying to keep me occupied, or maybe I am all that exists. Maybe each and every one that comes to visit me under the premise of hospitality, or the structural safety of my home, or investigation, or for my own benefit, is coming to get a spark of life or a glimpse of living, of experiencing. One time I tried communicating with the actors, trying to get a feel of the depth of their minds. You see, I could believe that they exist just like me. However, something in my mind denies it. If a child can be deceived by something as small as hands, then what says that I should not be deceived by this world, too? I grew up with people around me. Everyone did. They accept this and do not question it, especially with my once premature mind. What stipulates that I should not be tricked? I recognize this midway through my interrogation with one, and left him out in the shed in the backyard. He was too weak to plead. However, I DT, he suffered much. I shut the door, walked upstairs, and he ended. All was quiet. Now more of them have come and searched my home. Police, a figment of my imagination that I once respected. I suppose I cannot fully dictate the flow of my environment, as they were able to capture me, take me to another room, concrete floors. They allow me to write. However, I doubt that my handwriting is much legible anymore. I write this now to whom it may concern in order to help you grasp the truth. Perhaps there are those of you who are like me. Perhaps nothing exists beyond the axis. Door. Either way, I am confined here, as I have always been. Nothing is changed. Story 2. Hon, I'm home. Hon, I'm home, Dylan said as he walked into the house, shutting the door behind him. The apartment was beautiful for a building that was built in 1812. The old schoolhouse now was home to 4 apartments. The apartment itself was beyond perfect. For just the 2 of them, the ceiling was a good 15 feet high. The giant 9-foot-tall windows gave the home a very high-class atmosphere, and the kitchen certainly met up with the standards. Even though the apartment was perfect, The building itself gave off an eerie look, as expected with any building that was over 200 years old. "Hey, hon, 'tis wife, Jasmine," said smiling, as she walked out from the guest room. "How was work?" she said, hugging him and giving him a kiss. Her hazel eyes looked up at him. She was just 5'2" and he was 6'3". It was all right, nothing too horrible today. "How's unpacking coming along?" Dylan asked, looking around the house. There were a few boxes still packed, but nothing compared to just 3 days ago. "That's good, and it's getting there. It's almost done. I see that. Oh, I forgot my bag in the car," Dylan said, kissing her again. "I love you." He grabbed his bag and shut the door. The three-story building looked gloomy, almost haunting. In the little sun that was left, he opened the main doors and stepped in the hallway, which was more of a large conference room with dull blue carpet plopped in the settee. There were 2 doors side by side on the right wall. Apartments 3 and 4. His was 4. 2 doors sat on the other wall, as well as a staircase. One of the doors lead into an old classroom that the landlord was renovating to what Dylan assumed would be a new apartment. The staircase led to the 2 smaller upper apartments. The other door led to the basement. Dylan had never had any RIAs on to go down there. The apartment itself was plenty, big enough for the little furniture and belongings him and his wife had. Being as curious as he was, Dylan decided to open the basement door and go down. Light from the setting sun shone through the ground windows, which lined the top of the walls. The stairs were relatively new. He got to the base of the stairs and took a deep breath. It was chilly within the stone walls. There were open rooms throughout the basement. It seemed that these were all once classrooms, now just storage rooms for the landlord and past tenants. Walls between rooms were old and dusty. Some spots even had bricks laying beside them as if they were torn or smashed out of the walls. There was a hallway behind the first 2 rooms. As he got further from his stairs, he noticed there were no more windows. The only light was the small glimmer of light from the windows across the basement. Each step kicked up a tiny cloud of dust. Clearly no one me down here recently. There was an open doorway to his right, a small light shining from it into the hall. He went in and immediately noticed that the back of the room indeed had windows. They had just all been painted black, and the light was coming from a partially shattered window. In the room sat several dressers, a few boxes, and a bed frame. Plenty of bugs that crawled through the wind lied dead on the floor. Dust covered the boxes and furniture. The room had a deep red haze to it from the glistening sun. Behind one of the bed frames sat a quite large thing. It was of about 8 feet tall, leaning along the wall. Several blankets were wrapped around it and taped, protecting whatever was within the bundles. Dylan got closer and was puzzled at the fact that if something was so special to wrap up in several blankets, why would someone leave it here? Nothing else was wrapped up. In the first rooms, there were plenty of lamps, mirrors, and other breakable items just laying around. Why was this item so special? Dylan's curiosity got a hold of him. He moved the bed frame and began carefully taking off the tape. One by one he unraveled the blankets, revealing a very old wooden frame mirror. The frame was stained a dark brown, giving the mirror a very nice aurora. He wiped the dust off the frame, running his fingers slowly along the engravings in the wood. It was one line of symbols, which looked foreign, that wrapped completely around the mirror. Even behind the layer of dust, the mirror gave off a slight glimmer. Dylan wiped it off with his hand, one single stroke, enough to reveal his face in the glass. His brown eyes stared back at him. There was something in which intrigued him about his own reflection. Something didn't seem right, but at the same time it looked like every other reflection he had seen. He placed his hand on the glass and looked closer. Maybe his eyes were irritated, or he had bags under his eyes. It was a longer work day than usually. No bags under his eyes, and his eyes were fine. "You shouldn't be down here," James said, causing Dylan to jump. "You scared the hell out of me, man." James stayed silent. He lived upstairs in one of the apartments with his wife and daughter. "You shouldn't be down here," he said again, just looking around. "Is it yours?" Dylan asked, pointing to the mirror. "Not mine, it's theirs," James replied as he stepped closer into the light, revealing an old hatchet. "James, are you okay?" "I haven't been okay for a long time," he replied, walking closer with no expression. James raised the hatchet and struck Dylan's head, the blade jamming 5 inches right in his forehead, killing him instantly. James ripped out he hatchet and turned to the mirror, a soft grin spreading across his face. He dragged Dylan's body and propped it against the mirror and stepped back. A few minutes passed, and a long, thin hand slowly came out of the mirror's glass, grasping Dylan's head and pulling his corpse slowly into the mirror. Several minutes passed, with nothing in the mirror except what should be. James impatiently began tapping his foot. The air grew cold and somehow felt as if the oxygen was gradually being drained from the room. One foot emerged from the glass, then a leg, until an entire being stood before James. It looked like Dylan. Same clothes and even the same hairstyle Dylan had just moments before. But it was not Dylan. Whatever it was stood its legs twisted and bent backwards, his arms and hands twisted in positions that should be impossible. The sounds of cracking pierced the air as the thing began twisting its body. Within a minute there it stood, perfectly upright. Now in every aspect it looked like Dylan. The creature gave a sinister grin as the last bit of light faded from the room. The creature opened the door to apartment and stepped inside. It sounded just like Dylan as it said, "I'm back." Story 3, The Gift of Mortality. Death, for many it is a conch, apt to be feared, to be respected. It is the ender of relationships, of knowledge, of everything that you were and will have ever been. They see it as nothing but a monster, the blades ready at a moment's notice, to cut clean through the fragile string you call your life. For others, it is but the next great step in the journey of existence. When it is time for them to shed their physical bond with the world, they do so gladly and without hesitation. They know not what waits beyond, but hope that there is yet more to discover, to experience, to explore. They are happy to go on, some simply consider it an escape, a way to flee from the pain of living, the hurt that comes from simply being alive. When life becomes too much to bear, they welcome the embrace of death regardless of what may follow after. For them, they do not care about meeting it prematurely, or if there is more. They only desire for their suffering to cease. The one thing that all agree upon is that death is a universal truth, Just as every being has a beginning, there must also come an end. Everyone prepares for it in different ways, but the result is always the same. No matter the person, no matter the status, no matter your wealth, riches, family, friends, everyone finds themselves in the ground one day. But what if that weren't true? Let us consider the fantastic. If we were to delve into the realm of imagination, and say perhaps that you were undying, what would the ramifications be? Well, there are two aspects to consider, physical and mental. Let us assume for a moment that even if you weren't to die, your body would still be susceptible to aging, to disease, to lacerations. If you were to continue aging far beyond the limits of our programmed destruction, life would quickly become a living hell. Your body would degrade, becoming weaker and weaker with each passing day. Eventually, if it hadn't happened already, you'd no longer be able to walk, as your muscles and bones would have become far too fragile to support your weight. Soon you wouldn't be able to move at all, lest you tear your body apart. And once your eyes were used up and dry, the load would turn black to them, as well as the rest of your senses. In due time, imagine a fate such as that. Paralyzed, blind, and deaf to reality, but to life. A mass of disintegrated bone and flesh, no more than a puddle of soupy tissue. But yes, alive. Not so extravagant a thought, is it? Or maybe earlier on in your eternal life, you found yourself struck down with a disease of some kind, maybe cancer, while many others have failed to beat it. You wouldn't, however, perhaps you wouldn't quite succeed either. It is possible to assume that without proper and timely treatment, you'd simply be stuck in a stalemate with it for the rest of your life, which in your case is a long while. Imagine the pain that others go through in those last few months of their life, where many people are ever eager for their death to arrive, for an end to their suffering, a torture so great it forces people to beg for the sweet release of life leaving their bodies. But that isn't an available option to you, is it? No, you'll simply be left to your torment as the tumors continually grow, pressing hard against your bones, your nerves, your muscles, enveloping everything inside you. Who knows what will happen given enough time? No one before you has lived long enough to see. And finally, what if you were wounded? What if you were tortured? If they could tear your limbs apart and left you there because they have a guarantee you won't die? What if they removed your skin inch by inch until you were nothing but bloody muscle and tendon underneath, where even the lightest of touches would send cascading waves of pain throughout your vessel, but not kill you? That is what you face on the physical aspect, if you were to become invulnerable to death. But now we must move on to the mental consequences. Let us ignore all of what has been stated above and imagine that you're a perfectly healthy individual, no sickness and no aging. For 50 years or so you might feel very confident about your choice. But what happens when your family starts to die? Your parents may be expected, but your siblings, what of your best friends having to watch each one's last breath, clasp each hand as their strength leaves them? How many funerals would you have to attend when everyone you've ever known and loved has died? How would you maintain in a family if you were to bear children with your wife or husband? How would that impact your relationship as they continued to age and grow older as you stayed the same? a single moment of your life, frozen in time forever, eventually your children would surpass you. And not only would you witness the death of your significant other, but it would be your children whose hands you must hold as they travel into the next realm, and then your grandchildren, and their children, and so forth. It's all right, you'll start over. In a few decades you'll be able to move on, to leave and start a different bloodline than the one you've now abandoned, and then you'll have to undergo the same process again, losing your love, then your children, over and over with each new glimmer of hope you gain to lead a normal life. They say that there's no greater punishment than having to bury one of your own children. Well, you'll have to bury all of them. Maybe you grow eyes and distance yourself from humanity before you go insane from the mental stress that simply existing places on your mind. That's only a temporary solution. Unfortunately, everything is when you can't die. When the earth falls into the sun in billions of years, and the sun burns itself out of existence, what then is left? You'd still be there, the one constant in the entirety of the universe, FL, floating through dust and ghosts of your solar system throughout the dark void of space, no oxygen, no heat, and no company. Completely alone for the rest of eternity. When the universe finally dies, will T-hat be the end of you? Will it finally be your time? Or will you be forced to still linger on, witnessing reality as it was never meant to be seen, such as the gift of mortality? Everyone at some point in their life asks themselves, what would it be like to live forever? That's not the question they should be asking. The true question you should ask yourself is this: what happens when an immortal wants to die? Story 4. Isolation. As I write this, I am still struggling every day to pacify the darkness. However, I have been able to somehow rid it fro. Am I surface conscious? It resides somewhere layers down in my psyche, and it could certainly come to the surface in a moment's notice if I'm not careful. The tiniest stimuli could easily bring this all back, which is why I've lived a very simple life of isolation, where little to no stressors occur to bring about these thoughts. One may think that isolation would make it worse, but that is not the case. That's how these things work. The more these thoughts come to the surface of our conscious, the more we allow our mind to become connected to this other dimension. And with certain personality traits, those who are observant, sympathetic, and free-spirited, this is where the struggle comes to play. Most people will remain oblivious to this, especially those who have never seen darkness in their life in the form of trauma. For example, they lack the sensitivity required. Once we have seen some kind of darkness in our lives, we understand it exists. We understand how it feels, as does the mind. I have seen this darkness in my life, and years after seeing it, my mind was hit with a way of dealing with it. I live alone in a rather large house. It began visual flashes of these amorphous creatures, which still hit me from time to time. They would push themselves against the glass doors as well as the windows of my house, of which are many. Their skin would press up against the glass, increasing in surface area of it, changing the color, taunting me to interact with them. With the shutting of my eyes, the tightening of my fists, and thoughts of sanctuary, they would seem to go away. Remember that these were purely flashes of the imagination. I did not take them as a haunting or anything like that. There is a lot of space in this house to be filled with hellish thoughts. I've had flashes of fire imagery as well as blurry beings gazing at me. After a few months of increasing paranoia, I realized that turning on the TV really helped me get through it. I would focus so hard on things like the cooking channel or sports, getting more involved with these things than I ever before was. When I really focus on these things, I only feel a vague sense of being watched without the imagery or the sounds that sometimes come with these thoughts. I have a very specific TV schedule where I would also take a lot of snacks and sometimes have beer. This became a ritual of my own. It seems that being in the center of my house is more effective. When I attempt to distance myself up in a corner of the house, I begin to hear sounds. Perhaps this is my mind's way of telling me not to run away from my problems. But I am long past the point of that. I hear footsteps walking towards the room I was in, as well as under me and above me. They seem to kind of leave me alone if I am in the dead center of my home. A memory in which typing about is difficult occurred in my bathroom one night. I was washing my face, and I had a very strict regimen I followed in skin care at the time. Even being a guy, I often felt a paranoid sense that something would come from behind me as I leaned over the sink to rinse and do something like stab me in the back. However, I could get over that and shrug it off. That month had been the first month where I did not go outside of the house all month, other than the porch for about an hour a day. I remember feeling as if I was the last person on the planet. I had not been in contact with anyone for a long time. No one was even trying to reach me, either, as I looked up from splashing my third handful of water on my face. I no longer saw myself or anything that resembled the bathroom in the mirror's reflection. What I saw instead was a very dead, empty field behind me. It was as if all the life was sucked out of previously prolific farmland, covered in gray, and put into my mirror, as if it were a painting. It was the most depressing thing I had ever seen. I could not focus on myself in any sharpness. I was just a nauseating blur, and that painting, the painting, then faded into night, then blackness, then covering the entire area of the mirror faded and pale, featureless faces pushing against the mirror as if it were glass, and they were on the other side. They all began to scream. It was a deafening, high-pitched sound. When I snapped out of it, there was dead silence other than the sink running, and I was just looking at myself wide-eyed in the mirror. I looked sickly. After about a minute of standing there in shock, I turned the sink off, put my night creams on, and went down to my living room, where I was sleeping. From then on, I often feel like I'm being looked down on whilst sleeping, from both the windows as well as tall beings looking down right next to me as I sleep. Cliché, sure, but this fear has to be based off something primeval for humans, of which my mind has adopted. Sometimes they will be rapidly moving their mouths, but no sound is heard. Their emotions seem to change as the days pass, and they come and go. The glare of the TV, which stays on all night, is the only thing that keeps me here. Keep in mind, I almost never leave my home, only to stock up on food. About once a month. I cannot handle being in public, and only God knows how I actually function in public. I probably have a much different idea of how I act than how I actually act in reality. I don't have much money left. I'm not sure where I'll be in about a year. The house is not the cause of my problems. I will have to make a transition to get to a similar mindset wherever I end up. These thoughts always stay with me in some way, shape, or form, and I'll never be the same. After 2 years of experiencing these haunting thoughts, I've been able to control them in a large way. This isn't a ghost story, rather a look into a very damaged psyche, something that can happen to many people. I still don't believe these are spirits, ghosts, or creatures from hell. I think all of those things reside within us, and for many is trying to get out more and more every day. A good friend of mine once told me many years ago, we make our own hell. I no longer have friends, or anybody for that matter, but I wholeheartedly agree with him. Story 5. Roommate Problems. I had moved out of my last apartment that February. My roommate had gone crazy and I had to get out. By crazy, I don't mean crazy. I mean insane. She thought she was being abducted by aliens. They were taking her at night and running experiments on her. She said they were testing her body for exposure to something my therapist said I show. Alden say she's insane. He says that's a terrible way to describe someone with mental health problems. He says she probably had control issues, and that being abducted was a way for her to both stigmatize and fetishize loss of control. I know, right? She got hospitalized when she tried to kill her parents. They stopped by the apartment one afternoon to bring her groceries. I think they thought she was going nuts, and the grocery drop-off was a not-so-elaborate ploy to see if she was. Their ploy worked. She accused them of being clones and made a bull rush at them with kitchenette scissors, the kind you use to clean chicken breasts. Her dad was ex-military or something like that, and got her in this complicated hold, and we called the cops, and they took her off to Westview, 7th floor. I heard one of the cops say. I Googled it later. 7th floor was the psych ward. She lost control. The next day I rolled out of the apartment. Without Claudia there, I couldn't afford the rent, and with the way her parents took all of her shit, I couldn't imagine she was coming back. That left me needing a place, which I wasn't quite sure how I was going to manage. I had left my last job in a hasty and desultory manner. It was Starbucks, and my god-awful manager accused me of taking home a tray of pastries. Legally, I denied it, but it was totally true. ISH. I'd suck my ex-corporate cock at him as I left, even though, as a girl, I technically have no cock. I crashed that night at Julia's, but her boyfriend hated me, so I knew I had to find something else quickly. The next day, I found the place on Craigslist. Roommate wanted $250 per month. I could make $250 per month. You have to work to not earn $250 month. The place was an utter shithole, and it was way off any sort of bus line, which is why it was so cheap. But the girl, Holly, wasn't awful at all. She was in her final semester at university and interning NG at some mental health outreach 20 hours a week. She had a Tumblr called Introspectivix that was just pictures of cats looking at themselves in the mirror. She drank such cheap wine, I liked her. A few weeks after I moved in, she asked me if I saw anything weird the night before. Lights, any weird lights. I knew before she did. A few weeks later, she told me they were taking her at night while I slept experiments, surgeries. She showed me a cut on her back. Look at this, she whispered. Look at it. I did. It looked like a cut. She didn't come back to the apartment one night, and then the next. Her boyfriend, however, came over the next. Lyle, nice guy. I knew him from freshman year intro to English lit class. Beowulf to Virginia Woolf. He told me Holly had been having problems. She moved back home to her parents' house. She wasn't planning on coming back. By now I was working again at the trash for Q down the street, selling cigarettes and energy drinks 3 nights a week. That income allowed me to be able to afford the place on my own, so I didn't have to move, although the empty apartment made me feel like I was the only living person in the world. Then I would leave the building and see people walking around like the world was so normal, so routine. They just left their apartments and went outside. I was taking 6S that semester after Holly talked me into trying school again. Although it was only 2 classes, it made me eligible for a few hours of counseling every week at the shitty drop-in mental health clinic I religiously went, talking to my therapist, Mr. Whitley, about what had been going on. After a few sessions, I noticed he seemed different. It wasn't so much anything he said or did, and Holmes. He didn't say or do much in general, just sat and maybe listened while I complained about my life, but he just seemed different, like something was bothering him. One day, after I sat down, he started in with the questions. Where was I from? What did my parents do? What was my earliest memory? What did I do as a child? Where did I go to elementary school? I told him the essay, me thing I always did. My memory is terrible. I literally barely remember the last hour of my life. He kept asking, his voice rising. What are the names of your parents? Where are you from then? What are you doing to me? I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. His eyes looked far away, and spit was coming out of his mouth, like he was a dog trying to bite me. They're coming. Gee, for me, he said, getting out of his chair. They're taking me. At night, the lights, every night, I don't know what. I got up from the chair, trying to back away to the door. The aliens, they're taking me because of you. And it stops right now. He pulled out a fucking knife, a knife of all things, and leapt toward me. I screamed and kicked him. I felt my leg. I felt something enter my leg, and I started screaming again, not in fear or anger, but just sheer unbelievable wet agony. Somehow my kick had managed to knock off his glasses. When security rushed in, he was on his knees, red-faced and gray-haired, trying to find him. The security dude, Carlos, he was super chill. He and I talked about bluegrass sometimes. Carols loved mandolin froze, staring, at the 2 of us, me bleeding from the cut on my leg and Mr. Whitley sweating and crazy looks. I think Mr. Whitley made Carlos's decision easier when he screamed, direct quote, he needed to kill the girl. She brings the aliens. After everything was done, an EMT came and bandaged up my leg. This is a really bad cut, but it could have been a lot worse. You're definitely going to need stitches. I know. I can't believe my therapist tried to kill me. I know, right? This world is CRA. Oh, did you? She paused. Did you have surgery here? On my leg? No. Why? Because she pulled out a piece of gleaming, translucent metal out of me. Ceiling lights throbbed and reflected against the strange metallic, blood-smeared surface. It seemed to soak in all the light in the room. What is this? My first memories were the lights, pulling me into them. Story 6. The Theater. Have you ever heard of an old PC game called The Theater? Yeah, I didn't think so. Probably because many people say it doesn't even exist. You see, The Theater is an old computer game released around the same time as Doom today. If you ever find it, it's only available on crappy boodle, e.g. CD-ROMs, which, more often than not, don't even actually contain the game. The actual legitimate copies that they say were released back in the day feature a blank cover with nothing but the sprite of what has since been named the ticket taker. He is simply a poorly drawn, pixelated Caucasian bald man with large red lips wearing a red vest over a white shirt and black pants. He is completely emotionless, though some say that if you smash the disc his face is shown as angry the next time you look at the cover. But this is just dismissed as an urban myth. What is peculiar about The Theater, though, is that there is no developer named. The installation process immediately locks up the computer when the user reaches the licensing agreement. Also strange about the licensing agreement for The Theater is that whenever the development studio is supposed to be named, the text is simply a blank line. Anyways, most people who have claimed to own one of the original C-discs say that they figured out how to install the game by simply rebooting their computer on the licensing agreement with the disc still inside. Then they are prompted to press I agree on startup. Then they continue with the installation. The game then starts up without any introduction besides a main menu that is simply the sprite of a movie theater's exterior on an empty city street. The title fades in, and then the three menu buttons: New Game, Load, Options. Selecting Options immediately crash the game to the desktop. Load is said not to function at all. Even if you do have a saved game, nothing happens when you press it. Thus, New Game is the only working menu option. Once it is selected, you are in the first-person view. You are standing in an empty movie theater lobby, with the exception of the ticket taker standing in front of a dark hallway which one can only assume leads to the theaters themselves. There's nothing to do but look at the poorly drawn, mostly illegible movie posters or approach the ticket taker. Once the player moves towards the ticket taker, a very low-quality sound clip plays saying, "Thank you, please enjoy the movie," along with a speech box saying the same thing. You then walk into the hallway and the screen fades to black and you're back in the empty lobby, and you do the exact thing again and again and again. While this may sound like a really horrible game, a number of peculiar things occur as you continue to play it. The number of times that you have to continue into the hall after giving your ticket to the ticket taker before the strange events happen is unknown. Most state that it's completely random and could take anywhere from the first playthrough to the 400th. What happens, though, has deeply disturbed some players. The first occurrence is when the player fades back in after walking into the hallway. This time they will notice the ticket taker is completely absent. The player then, without any other options, decides to walk into the dark hallway. The sound clip and text box mentioned previously still play in the absence of the ticket taker. But when the player walks into the hallways, the screen does not fade out. It goes pitch black as they walk deeper into the hall. But the player's footsteps sound clip is still playing as they continue to push the up button on their keyboard. Hosts claiming to have played the original game report to have felt extremely uncomfortable walking down the hallway, anticipating the whole way something horrible happening. Well, eventually the player is unable to move forward. There is nothing for a few moments before a strange sprite that is described as the ticket taker, but with a swirl for a face, appears and stands before the player. The original players of the game say their bodies immediately froze up and their stomachs turned. They saw this sprite, which has been appropriately named the Swirly Head Man. Nothing happens as the swirly head man stands before them. Then suddenly a piercing screech plays as the game glitches out. This lasts for a few minutes, with the screeching being continuous. Then the player is abruptly redirected to the lobby with all the sounds and graphics being as they should be. The game continues normally for the next couple of cycles of entering the hallway, with a couple of the original players claiming the swirly head man would briefly appear and disappear in the corner of the screen as a brisk yelp sound effect plays. Then, at some point after meeting the swirly head man, the player sees the ticket taker pacing back and forth, though there is no walking animation. The sprite's limbs are completely static, so he just hops up and down slightly as a substitute, with his eyes being wide and his mouth open to simulate a worried facial expression. Some players noted that the movie posters had been replaced with images of the swirly head man, which caused them to immediately and their characters head away from the posters and approach the ticket taker. Then another different, low-quality sound clip plays, but the speech box contains nothing but corrupted characters that whatever text that would have been in the box to be completely illegible due to the extremely low quality of the sound. It is debated by players what exactly the ticket taker says at this point, though it is widely agreed that he says, "Never reach the other levels." Then the screen fades out once again and returns the player back to their starting point in the lobby. But the ticket taker is gone and the hallway is blocked by a large brick wall sprite. Touching the brick wall will immediately crash the game. And that's all there is to it. No one knows what the other levels are or how to gain access to them, nor is it known why the swirly head man causes such acute fear in those who have seen him in the game. All the original copies of the theater have either been lost or destroyed, but the creepiest part is the fact that all the original players of the game claim to occasionally see a brief glimpse of the swirly headband out of the corner of their eyes. Story 7. Something's Wrong Diary. Entry the 1st to the 2nd of September 2012. Something is wrong. There's just something not right recently. It's been like this for a while now, about a month. I don't know what it is, but I just had this feeling, or rather, it's not that I have a feeling, but there's a feeling around everywhere I go, drifting about, spreading ice so and crazy. But you know when you get that weird sensation, a kind of sense, you know something's up. Well, it's like that, but it's somehow more sinister, and it has no intention of stopping. People are always going on about how humanity has become so fucked up, and things aren't the same anymore, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think I'm starting to understand that, except it's not just humans. Something somewhere is changing, and not for the better. I don't think it's anything we can stop. Humans, I mean. We're so powerless and weak compared to whatever is going on. Something is shifting, and more change is afoot. I know I should be feeling shitty right now, unhappy, and not at all my usual self. My auntie died last week. We were pretty close, and I was really similar to her. I did practically everything she ever did, but this is different. Diary entry the 2nd to the 10th of September. I don't think I can stand the invasiveness anymore. It's dominating my thoughts, and no matter how hard I try to block it, it just won't stay out of my mind. I want everything to be back how it was, normal and familiar. Now it's cold and I don't recognize anything. It's all less strange and I feel so unwelcome. Nowhere feels like home, as if this feeling of foreboding maybe is everywhere, and there's no escaping it. Wherever I go, even when I am in my house, in bed tucked under the covers, the only thing which would make me feel safe as a kid, I can't be at ease. It's starting to feel like someone's watching me. Not somebody bad, though, which is why it's so confusing. There is something so negative and unwholesome about the feeling it's spreading. But I'm sure, or at least as sure as I can be of anything at the moment, that they would do nothing to hurt me. Whoever I is watching me is not a bad person. Troubled, perhaps. Diary entry the 3rd to the 1st of October. Okay, so I'm starting to question everything now. Life, death, my fucking sanity. I can't be in the same room as a mirror without hallucinating, and I can't be anywhere with my back turned to anything except a solid wall. I'm seeing things all over the place, shadows, smiling faces, and I swear people fucking drowning in fire or some shit. It's always in the corner of my eye, but if I turn round there's nothing there. I keep trying to convince myself that it's only my imagination, but come on, who am I kidding? There's some greater force out there, something out to get me. Diary entry the 4th to the 12th of October. I've got a different feeling now, a horrible one, a hunch, but I don't want to even write it down just yet. I'll do anything to avoid dwelling on the thought of it, and if that means not speaking of it in any way, shape or form, then that's fine with me. You see, I've never been a superstitious person, but as well as for the reason of not thinking about it, I'd also rather not have it on paper just in case that could somehow seal my fate. Fuck. I don't even know. I've also never been a particularly religious person. I guess I never really given it much of a thought, but I'm beginning to wish I had. A few weeks into all this I actually started praying, every bloody night and every bloody morning, begging for it to stop. Nothing's happened though. Again, I think I might know why. Diary entry the 5th to the 19th of October. Okay, I seriously can't take it anymore. I can't. I am genuinely willing to do whatever it takes to stop this. I don't care, as long as I don't have to hurt anyone, or at least anyone but myself. I've made up my mind about anything anyway. I want this to be read by somebody at some point. When that will be, I don't know. But I'm hoping I won't be around by that point. Oh, and in that case, I might as well say what this hunch of mine is. I think that it's something to do with my auntie. Like I said, she passed away a few months ago now. Wherever she is, I'm pretty sure she's far from at peace. No one really knows where we go once we die, but I hope we don't all go where she has. That's the worst part, though. I think it's also something to do with me. I have a feeling I'll end up there too, and it's going to be heaven. If you get my gist. Instead, I'm pretty sure it will be that place everyone knows. I'm not going to name it. That place of shadows, evil smiles, and fire. Fire that people drown and get eternally tortured in. I have a feeling that, well before, when I said I felt I was being watched, but whoever was watching me was not bad, just troubled. I think it's her, and that she's trying to tell me something, trying to tell me I'm not meant to be on this earth anymore, that whatever is not right in her afterlife is something I have to see, that I am going to have to join her soon, too. Cut a long story short, I have to die. I've seen this sort of thing in movies. It's always heart-wrenching when the hero has to sacrifice himself and die for the greater good. But when it's you that has to make that sacrifice, I'm not that brave. I'm no hero. I'm normal. Yet I have been so cruelly pushed away by this world, made to feel so unwanted, and I know that I shouldn't be here, and that as long as I continue to survive, the earth will forever be a hellish place. Everything will be wrong, out of balance, and it will be me causing it out of my own selfish refusal to do something as simple as die. So, like I said, I will do anything to make it stop, and I've got the pills in my hand. It's too late to turn back now. I've already accepted my fate. I can only hope that this will make things right.